Hello everybody, please excuse the fact that I look like a bum as it is my day off and I have been at home, relaxing, kind of doing what I want to do basically on my day off. Not relaxing, I've been planting and moving things around, and my love bug has been building something for me that's very exciting. I've baked some focaccia bread today and also a sourdough loaf, so I'm gonna just show you what I planted, show you my bread, and then show you what's going on outside. Alright, so these are some biodegradable kind of mesh planting bags that I ordered on Amazon. I think I got 200 of them, and here we have 24 of them planted out with 3 different kinds of peppers. So here we have 8 Sugar Rush peach peppers, 8 Anaheim peppers, and then 8 habanada peppers. My lettuce is looking good. I also did a bit of rearranging in here. I'm going to plant this out later tonight. And these are all just filled with soil and ready to plant, and I've been watering them to make sure that they don't become hydrophobic. I also have some smaller versions of these same bags for things like herbs and lettuces, leafy things that don't need as much soil space. And all of these things back here, everything that I'm going to be growing soon in those bags, I don't really know what they're made out of, they're biodegradable mesh bags, I don't know. Everything that I'm going to be growing in those soon are things that I'm going to be taking to the Tulip Festival to sell. I didn't want to sell people plants and them not be in some kind of container, but I also didn't want to get rid of and give away and have to charge for my reusable extra strength plastic containers. So I just ordered some biodegradable non-reusable ones online so that I can sell them in those. Okay, now my bread. Last night I prepared a focaccia loaf and a regular sourdough, like artisan loaf is what they're called, and I baked them today. Here is my artisan loaf. I experimented a little bit with using a slightly lower temperature because the bottom was getting cooked more than I wanted it to. So the bottom has a better cook on it, but now the top isn't as crusty as I want it to be, so it'll be something to figure out slowly. And then this is the focaccia loaf that I made. It has salt, pepper, little slivers of fresh garlic and oregano, so it's basically a garlic and herb focaccia loaf. Alright everyone, we are outside and there are things going on. So as I've already told you, we took down my greenhouse, which had a lot of these things in it, these pots and this table, and my compost bin were over here. The greenhouse was right here. That like black circle is where the greenhouse was, and we took down that tree as well as that tree, and now we're building. Well, I'm not building. My love bug is building a greenhouse for me. So as of right now, the holes are dug, all of the walls are built and framed in how they're going to be. This specific board right in the front is not quite long enough. It's actually going to be a 2x4, just like on this side here. This is a 1x4. So we have to buy a 2x4 to go across there, and then a few more 2x4s to frame out the door, which the door is going to be right here and open outward like this. And this is basically the replacement for my little greenhouse. You can't tell how big it is. I am now inside it. So it is a 10 by 10 in the floor space. Maybe a little bit bigger on the roof because we didn't make it perfectly exact, just enough to be good enough. So yeah, we've got a greenhouse going on, guys. This was only, I think, 2.5 hours, not even 2 hours worth of work for my love bug and one of his friends who he got to help him. I paid him in food, so that's cool. And I think they're gonna get it finished tomorrow. We already have all of the plastic that needs to be wrapped around it, as well as all of the roof panels, so they just have to get a few more pieces of wood, finish framing it out, and then a few hinges and latches and stuff to go on the door to make sure it can stay closed. And that'll be awesome. I am so excited. My first ever actual greenhouse. So yeah, that's a little bit of what's been going on today. What is up, guys? How are you doing? It is probably a week later after the first little section of this that I recorded, because we've been working extra and life happens, and it's been pouring down rain multiple days in a row, so not everything got done on the greenhouse, but all of the framing is basically done. We just have to put on the roof and put the plastic on the outside, so let me show you what's going on. So here she is, looking a little bit different than the last time you saw her. Don't ask me why it's a her, that's just what fits for some reason. Bug added supports in the door as well as framed in the door with hinges. We ordered these latches off of Amazon. It's a little hard to open right now. We do have to sand a little bit of the bottom of the door, but that will be fixed shortly. We have this X now in place for structure of this section of the frame. Still, I don't even know if this bit of the roof was on last time I showed it to you, but we've got one line of the roof on, and we had to order another pack of the roofing materials, so we have enough now to do this and then some. The bottom has been framed in with 2 pieces of wood on this side and 1 on all of the other sides. I actually asked him to do that because I will be putting wood chips on the inside of this since we aren't building a floor. I'm just going to fill it with wood chips to help keep in more heat. On the inside, there's a latch up here so that if I'm inside the greenhouse and I need to close the door, I can just take this little bit out, slide it over and down. And now the door will stay closed while I'm in here. And then while I'm not in here, we just unlatch it, swivel it up, and right now we're using a stick. But I'll get like a large-headed nail or something in the future to keep the latch from loosening while I'm not in here. This is a 10 by 10 space-ish. We didn't use like squares and levels. It's not exactly perfect, but it is perfect enough for me. So this corner is the tallest, and then it angles down towards the back and also down towards this direction, and we did it to match the slope of our backyard because our backyard angles down towards this corner, basically is the corner of our yard, and that's the lowest point of our lot. So we wanted the slope of the roof to match the slope of the yard. These boards right here on the ground are these boards. So this one is for structural support for these boards that hold the roof. So there's going to be more in line this way, holding on the sheets of the roof. We also plan to install guttering on this entire side and this entire side because, like I said, it slopes back and that way. So I'm going to be catching the water, and I'll probably put some 55-gallon, those blue like drum barrels back here to catch rainwater and use that to water my garden when I can. And then also from about the halfway point of this wall to all the way down to the corner, and then the entirety of this back wall is going to have a shelf that's about this tall. That's probably 3 feet all the way across the back and side, and they're going to be double tiered, and they're going to be, the shelves themselves are going to be like hardware cloth, and the frame is going to be made out of wood so that we still have as much light passability as possible from the top and the sides. That's why the wood shelf is only going to go this side and this side, about right there, and it's going to come this way and that way. So I'll still have this entire area of the floor for like prepping or having a chair in here or just needing more space while I'm filling up like containers of soil and such. Okay guys, so my love bug is actually out running some errands for us right now in the form of going to the bank and things like that. And then he's going to pick up one of our friends on his way back so that he has a couple of extra hands, and they're going to hopefully today finish putting on the roof. Like I said, we have extra roofing materials and we bought extra plastic preemptively just to be sure in case there was some mismatched pieces. And after the greenhouse is done, I'm pretty sure the next project is to get all of this trash and junk out of our yard and off of our back porch, and then he's gonna build me raised garden beds. I'm so excited. What is up guys, good morning. It is the 9th of February today. I didn't have a ton to show you, I just wanted you to see that the roof has been put on the greenhouse. So the entire roof is done. We've got 5 rows of 3 panels, and then this last row is only 2 panels because all that we had to cover on this last row was this corner. So that only took 2 panels, and now all we have to do is trim this edge and this edge so that everything is flush. We also decided to cover the door in the same plastic that the roof is covered in. So these are the panels that are on the roof. They're like corrugated. They've got holes inside for like an air barrier for temperature. It's kind of like a bunch of straws, a bunch of really strong straws placed next to each other. So the door is done. We basically are going to put a handle right here so that you don't have to use this little thing. And the hole underneath of the roof, it feels very closed in now. All we have to do is run all the plastic sheeting along the outside. And then on this side, as well as this side, there's going to be guttering so that I can catch rainwater. And I'm also going to buy some bags of mulch at my local grocery store because they're the cheapest, to fill in the bottom. So the whole floor up to that 2x4 is going to be wood chips. Alright guys, I just wanted to show you the progress on the greenhouse, and now I gotta go to work, so I'll catch you later. There is a wintry mix of weather today. It's been raining, it's been sleeting, it is now sleeting and snowing, as well as I accidentally overproofed my sourdough bread, both the focaccia and the artisan loaf dough, because I had an appointment at the bank that I had forgot about until this morning. So, I need to take care of that. Let's do it. Okay, here is the bread. This one is the focaccia, and this one is the artisan sourdough loaf. I personally can tell by looking at them which one is which, but for the sake of you guys, I always do my artisan loaf in the clear bowl and my focaccia in one of the colored bowls. I have yellow and this green color, and that's what I do the focaccia in, but it gets really large, so I tend to use the yellow one more. Also, one of my co-workers had this bread machine for over a year. It is used, but they stopped using it, and he gave it to me, so now I guess I can make my own like white and wheat loaf breads also. That'll be great. We are here on the other side of the kitchen. I have brought my loaves, or my doughs rather. We're about to take care of them. But basically, I need to turn this focaccia bread out into a 9 by 13 pan that's coated in oil, and I just flip it over a few times and make sure the whole thing is coated in oil. Then it's going to have to sit in that pan for I think 30 minutes to an hour, and then you dimple it before you put it in the oven. Whereas the loaf bread, the artisan loaf, this one, I need to shape it, then let it sit for an hour in a banneton or whatever you want to let it sit in, and then you do a final shape, score the top, and bake that. Since the focaccia requires a lot less handwork, I'm going to do the focaccia first, and I'm going to turn you guys around so you can watch. Okay guys, so please ignore the state of my sink. I'm going to get to that after I'm done with this bread. So let me get a 9 by 13 pan. I think this pan might be bigger technically than a 9 by 13, but it is the biggest pan that I have, and this is the one that I like to make my focaccia in because I like my focaccia to be more flat than thick a lot of the times. So this is what we've got going on. Now the recipe calls to do this with olive oil, but olive oil is very expensive and I do not have any, so I am using vegetable oil. And I'm just going to use my hands to get it all over the pan. And then up the sides also. Oh, actually, this recipe doesn't say to put any parchment paper on the bottom of your pan, but both times that I've made it without parchment paper, I could not get the focaccia out of the pan. So I messed up a little bit. I'm going to scrape out a lot of this oil, or do my best. Some of it's going to stick, and that's fine. But I'm going to get as much of that oil down to the bottom as I can. And just pour it on top of the loaf for now, because it's going to get covered in oil anyway. I'm going to get some parchment paper. It doesn't have to be very much because I only want it on the bottom of the pan, not up the sides. So So we're just gonna lay this in the bottom and the oil will stick it down, so it's all good. I try to get out any air bubbles so that it doesn't shape my bread. I'm sure that's not required. Okay, so there's that. Now I'm going to redo this. Bottom of the pan in oil. On top of the parchment. On all of the edges of it. I want everything to be coated in oil. So we've got a good bit of oil in the bottom. Then we take the dough for the focaccia. And I just kind of use my fingers to scrape it out of the bowl, like off of the edges. And then at the very last, dump it and scrape more. There's usually some left in the bowl, but I don't bother trying to get it all out because it just makes a sticky mess of my hands. So now you cover the whole thing in oil, coat it. Make that thing wet. It's helpful if you cover your hands in oil too, because then it doesn't stick to you. Flip it over once, just to be sure. Coat that side. And there. I'm going to wash my hands. Okay, then I take a damp towel and I lay it over the focaccia. Now, the focaccia will rise, and that means not every bit of it will be coated in oil and it gets sticky. So I usually try and come up with a way to prop up the towel further away from the focaccia. For example, this time I think I'm going to just use the bowl and just leave it there and see if I can kind of lift up one edge and tuck the towel and let it be taut against the other edge where the bowl is, and kind of have it in place so that it's not touching the bread, but so that the bread doesn't lose moisture. I have moved the focaccia loaf setup over just over there so that I can use this bigger counter. Instead of oil, we sprinkle onto the counter some bread flour. I poured quite a bit, but you only really need one little layer, and then maybe get it on your hands so it doesn't stick to you as much, and spread out that flour here. That is way too much flour, just so you know. You only need about that much. That's fine. And just spread it out. This is just so it doesn't stick to the counter. You're not supposed to be mixing it in or anything. Just don't worry about it. Then we turn out the dough onto the counter. And we shape it. Now, this is the part that I'm not very good at yet, just so you guys know. Usually, instead of shaping it under itself like a lot of people do, I honestly shape it to itself, to the top, to create that tension. And then the bottom becomes the top of my bread. So I kind of just pull in the sides like this, like you're folding it, but just on a very small scale. And that is creating tension in the bottom part of the dough, and also allowing me to pinch together the parts that I do pull on. And I also only have an oval banneton, but I also only have a round Dutch oven for baking my bread. So I don't actually use my banneton. What I do is I take a damp towel, just like with the other one, and I place it into the same bowl that I had the dough in before. Then I get some more flour on my hands, even though I just washed them so that it doesn't stick. This dough is a lot less sticky, so I'm not worried about it sticking to the towel, just to the counter or myself. So I just flour my hands and then pick it up from the bottom where there will be the most flour to add to the flour on your hands as for it to not stick. It's a little bit sticky under one edge, so I'll tuck some flour under there. Then eventually you can just lift it up. Okay? And then I put this seam side up, so just like this, into here. On top of the towel, just like that. Right? Cover it with the towel over that way. Now this sits for 30 minutes to an hour. Then when I put it into the Dutch oven, you flip it over so the bottom becomes to the top, and that's the side that you score because that will be the smoothest side. It is not a requirement to score your sourdough loaves. People only do it because it lets you determine where you want your bread to rise. So at some point, enough air is going to build up inside the loaf that it's gonna split the top of the bread. That's just what happens. Enough steam and it rises, and it's gonna split your bread. So if you want it to look nicer or just have control over where the bread splits, you can basically just pre-cut it in certain locations, and then that's where the bread will spread apart instead of splitting. You're just giving it room to expand, basically. So now these loaves are going to sit for 30 minutes to an hour while I do some dishes and fold some laundry. And then I'll bring you back in and we will get them ready to bake. Okay guys, it has been about an hour. This is just my immersion blender from making my coffee. And it is time to get my sourdough loaf onto some parchment and into the Dutch oven. So it is very difficult to flip the bread directly into the Dutch oven because obviously it falls and doesn't land directly in the middle and just, it doesn't work out properly. So what I do is I put out some parchment paper. I put the dough onto the parchment paper. I make slits on the edges so that it'll fold nicely into the Dutch oven, and then I lower it down in there. So what I do is take it like this, and I put my hand under the cloth here, but on top of there. So basically just put your hand on top and try to keep as much of the weight of the bowl in your other hand as possible so you don't deflate your dough. I just flip it upside down like that and then flip it over onto the other side to uncover what will be the bottom, right? And then flip it, tack down the edges of my parchment paper, and then just flip it directly onto the middle of your parchment, and the wet towel comes off pretty easily. So that way from here, I can go from the bread to the edge of the parchment to make a slit, and these slits are just so the parchment paper fits better in the Dutch oven without folding or making creases in the bread actually. So I just do 4, and then I grab this and lower it into the Dutch oven. Just like that. Now it's down in there. So now I will let this sit for just 10 to 15 minutes while I get my focaccia ready. So the focaccia has obviously flattened out, spread itself. So what you do from here is honestly just use your fingers to shape it and poke some holes in it. That's about it. So we're gonna stretch it into the corners of the pan so that it's even. Just try and take some from the middle and slowly move it towards the corner. It is stretchy rather than like liquidy, so you have to kind of stretch it from where you have it to where you want it. Even then it might not stick exactly perfect, but that's fine. It's kind of dry on top, so I'm gonna add some more oil just to the top. and get that spread around. Add some oil to my hands so it doesn't stick to me. Just make sure there's oil over the whole top so you get a nice golden brown color. Then you take your fingers like this and you just poke it all the way down through the dough to the bottom of the pan. And then I usually do one more pass in the middle and one pass this direction. And that's it. And then this is the point where you would add any extra toppings or seasonings, and I am actually going to do that, so let me wash my hands. So for this one, I don't have much garlic. I only have 4 cloves of fresh garlic left, which is not nearly enough to put on this whole thing. I'll probably put something like 10 on one like this and just individually stick them into the bread. But I don't have enough, so we're going to skip the garlic today. We're going to go with salt. This is just, the thing isn't on it, but this is just Morton fine iodized salt. And just do a good little sprinkle over that whole thing. And then we're going to do cracked black pepper. Same, just over the whole thing like the salt. And then this is dried oregano, of which I only have a tiny bit. And this is actually oregano from my garden. I dried it myself and just put it back in this oregano jar, so it's pretty flavorful oregano. And the higher you sprinkle from, the more evenly your seasonings will be distributed. So I'm just going to use the rest of this oregano just like that. I already have my oven preheated. I'm pretty sure both of these recipes call for the oven to be preheated to 450 degrees, but I preheat my oven to 425 because my oven runs on the hot side, and when I do it at the temperature that the recipe says to do it, I get scorch marks on the bottom of my loaf. My focaccia bread cooks fine at the temperature it's supposed to, but my artisan loaf gets much darker on the bottom than I would prefer it to get, so I cook it at about 25 degrees lower than the recipe actually says. I'm going to check the recipe to make sure it says 450 and I'm cooking at 425 rather than it saying 425 and me cooking at 400. So let me check that. I was correct. It does say to preheat the oven to 450. So like I said, I have mine 425. I have a really old oven, yes, but you know what? It bakes things for me, so I'm not worried about it. So I'm going to go ahead and throw in this focaccia. And then I'm going to, actually I need to wash my lid for my Dutch oven. And I need to score this bread. So I don't have a scoring tool, and I also don't have a razor blade, and my kitchen knives are too thick and not sharp enough to slice through this properly. So what I've been doing is just using scissors, my kitchen shears, and I'll just do like 1, 2, and 3 big cuts, just like that. So now, instead of breaking the seam itself, it will rise and that will become part of the crust. The interior of these slits will become part of the crust of the bread. So now with this, 35 minutes with the lid on, and that allows for the bread to steam. All of the moisture that is within the bread will steam and cook the bread, and steaming the bread first allows the bread to reach its maximum potential rise, so there will be the biggest bubbles within the bread and it will get as big as it could possibly get. So we've got the loaf going in the oven right next to the focaccia, and I'm going to set a timer on my microwave. Timer 25 minutes, and that will be for the focaccia. And I'm going to set a timer on my phone for 35 minutes, and that's when I take the lid off of the loaf bread. Okay, the timer for the focaccia on the microwave just went off, but like I said, I will I don't usually cook the focaccia. We call it focaccia because my cat's name is Kashka, and when he sits on the floor or anywhere really, he makes like a loaf out of his body. He puts his feet up under him and curls his tail and like puts his neck in. So we call him Kashka Kitty Loaf. So since focaccia kind of sounds like Kashka, we call it focaccia loaf, just like an in-house kind of inside joke. So that's why I accidentally said that. But the focaccia loaf, I don't usually cook at a different temperature than the recipe says, but I'm cooking the bread at the same time, so it is at 25 degrees lower. So I'm going to turn you guys around and we're going to see how the focaccia looks, and if it needs to be a little bit more golden, then we'll leave it in the oven. Please just ignore the state of my oven, okay? This is used and was way used before I got it, and I have cleaned the inside since we've had it, and a lot of that stuff just doesn't come off, okay? I'm sorry. But looks like it's fairly golden, pretty golden on the bottom. I don't like it really crispy, so I think that is done enough for me. I'm gonna take that out. Set that right there. So that's one, and we should still have 10 minutes. We still have 10 minutes left until we have to take the lid off of the other loaf of bread. And I finished the dishes, except for that one pot, because I made burgers in it and there was cheese stuck to the bottom, so it's soaking for a bit. It is snowing and sleeting harder and harder by the minute, and it's not supposed to stop until mid-morning tomorrow. So I'm gonna throw on a jacket, and we're going to cover some of my outside plants with upturned containers, and we're also going to cut down a Brussels sprout plant because we're gonna eat it for dinner. So it feels hot in my house, so putting on this jacket hurts my soul, but it is cold out here, so I knew it wouldn't last long. Sorry I look so blue. My camera will adjust for that slowly but surely. Oh, it already did. Look at that. Okay. Still no plastic on the greenhouse because it was really windy, then we were at work, and now it is snowing, so it's just not conducive to continue working on that oh god, I almost fell at this exact moment. God, I almost fell again! Ah! Okay, so this is what's going on with the actual garden. Lots of dead things like cabbages and broccolis, but this broccoli's not totally dead. That's interesting. But over here, we have two Brussels sprout plants that definitely are not the biggest Brussels sprout plants I've ever seen, but they are the biggest Brussels sprout plants that I have ever grown. And I did not bring scissors out here. Dang it. We're going to harvest one of these plants, but first we're going to cover some of the other plants with containers because I'll have to run back in and get some scissors. Okay, my phone is in my sleeve, so I hope that you can see what I'm doing because I can't see what you're seeing. So we're going to cover this plant with these buckets. We're going to get some snow off of this one and cover it with that. It's not terribly cold outside. I just don't want them to be covered in snow. So just a little bit of coverage will be good enough. Most of those plants are dead. This one right here is not dead. This is a pansy. That will last as long as I take care of it. So I'll take a little one. I want a bigger one for it actually. Take this one here, put it over that there. Then that's another pansy. So we're going to take this big one here, get the snow off the pansy directly, and then put this over the top. Tuck that flower in there. There we go. We have a couple big buckets right here. This can go on top of this guy. And put this on top of this pansy. I think I have one more pansy. This is a lot of containers and it's unnecessary, but it's one of the only ones that I have available. So, where is it? That's not a pansy. Where is it? There it is. Oh, I think those are daffodils. That's cool. But here it is. This is the pansy. So I'll put it right over that. 1 5-gallon bucket to cover this. Oh, well. I'll cover this tiny Brussels sprout with this guy, and we're gonna use one 5-gallon bucket to cover whichever one of these Brussels sprouts I don't take. I think this one has better looking sprouts, so I'll keep that one. So we're gonna cover that with a bucket. I'm gonna go get scissors and we're gonna come cut that. Before it melts, it's even sticking to me. Ah! Oh, melting. Okay. But I got it. Okay, while I was out there getting that Brussels sprout, you guys were in my sleeve. My timer on my phone went off. That means I need to remove the lid from this artisan loaf, so what we do is we go in here, pull it out, center it, because I didn't fix it after taking out the focaccia. That's what it looks like as of right now. See how it is rising and splitting at the areas that I cut it. I didn't cut it quite deep enough apparently because it's still splitting otherwise, but that looks pretty good. Slide it back in, close that oven, start another timer. I'll do it on the microwave. Timer, 25 minutes. Timer. There we go. We are going to take all of the leaves and things off of this Brussels sprout plant, and if I recall correctly from watching people do this, I should be able to just kind of break them off if I pull them in the opposite direction that they grow, like that. But that seems a little bit difficult, so we're gonna cut them. That one came out, that one came out. Some of the dead ones just kind of come right out. This plant definitely could have continued to grow, but it is really cold outside. We have a couple more winter storms, a few days of the storm that's currently happening, and soon I'm going to be revamping my space for springtime growing anyway. So I'd rather use them now and guarantee that I can use them than wait another week, have a potential 80-degree day to where these become bitter. So I'm just going to use them now, even though there's not very many, and most of them are small. In fact, there's so few that I may have to go out and get the other plant also and just use both. If you've never seen Brussels sprouts, this is kind of how they grow. They come out of these little nodes, and they're just kind of hanging on there, and you can just pull them off like that. I've never had fresh Brussels sprouts like this, so hopefully they are good. It is just me and my love bug eating dinner. That's 10 sprouts, 11, 12. I put that one down in here because it is going bad on the inside. 17, 18, 19, 20. Oh, we will definitely have enough off of just this one plant. This makes me so happy because this is the third time that I tried to grow Brussels sprouts, and this is the first time that I got any sprouts off of it at all. Like, the first times they didn't even mature enough to start sprouting before it got too warm, or, you know, other things that make plants die. These small ones are pretty hard to get off of there. Ugh. Little baby Brussels. There we go. We've got Brussels sprouts. These ones are tiny, but when added to what we already got, that's more than enough for just 2 people for dinner. And that means all of this gets to go into my compost bin. Next on the agenda, we have some indoor plants to take care of. I knew this one had a pretty small pot for what size plant it was when I put it in there, but I'm fine with that. I'll just have to water it a bit more often than preferred. But there's also obviously a few dead leaves that I need to take off of that one. This one is doing pretty well. It's got multiple new leaves coming out. One on this one too. Little Florida Beauties are doing fine, and my snake plant is actually starting to grow. I'll probably have to take it out of this container soon and put it in a deeper one, but all of these, maybe not this one. Yeah, that one doesn't need water, but all the rest of them probably do. Yeah, it's pretty light. Oh. And those are pretty light. So yeah, we're gonna take all these down, give them some water. Alrighty, all of these plants have been watered except this one. It doesn't need water yet. These trees don't grow nearly as fast or use nearly as much water as these kind of leafy plants. I removed 2 or 3 leaves from this one just because they were kind of cosmetically damaged like this, but worse from being at Walmart. Honestly, it was already like that when I got it. And then these 2 little plants were both fine, and I removed, I think, only 3 dead leaves off of that one, and they're all looking good. And then I filled up this watering can, and these plants over here now need water. These plants, I tend to move this case to the side and scoot this over to the center so that if anything drops out of this plant, it will drop into this plant. I only water these about once a week. / whenever they need it, because they don't always need it once a week. Yes, that bird was technically a Halloween decoration, but I just love how it looks, a little skeleton bird sitting in my plant, so I leave it there. I need to dust this plant. I need to get my microfiber gloves and clean these leaves off with neem oil. And I tell if they're watered thoroughly by the weight, to be honest, so that's still pretty light. Give it another soak, and now you see it is dripping out of the bottom and directly into this plant, which is exactly what I wanted. I'm going to water this plant a little because the drips will not be enough. But that's probably enough. Let's see the weight. Yeah, that one's pretty decent. I think the bottom still has some water in it, but the top is pretty dry. Repotted this coleus recently, and you can definitely tell because all of this down here is so sparse, like the leaves had fallen off. And up here it is so fluffy. So it's just forcing growth to the end. I should probably clip the tops of these soon, and then I can propagate those, and it would force growth to the lower branches again. Not today, but in general, that's going to happen. That one's still pretty heavy and has a good reservoir down at the bottom, but nothing's dripping, so I'll give it a little bit more. And that'll be all for that. I'm going to pull some of the dead stuff just off of there. There we go. That already looks better. This one has a pot that has a reservoir at the bottom, so I don't have to worry about it dripping out. All this new growth on the top looks so good, and is just starting to overcrowd all this bad undergrowth from being in the soil it was in for too long. The last one we have over here is this guy. And then give it a lift to make sure it doesn't need more. Oh no, that guy should be good. And look how much it's draping over the side now. It could barely reach the edge when I put it in here. It's basically grown this whole section since repotting it. And this little guy in the middle is starting to produce new leaves also. Let's take this guy and this guy to the kitchen sink. And this will be perfect timing because we have a minute left on our timer for the bread. And these two are so small. That one's a cactus, so I mean I don't have to drench that one. But Coleus, Coleus likes to have pretty moist soil all the time. That's already running out the bottom, but that soil was pretty dry. So I'm gonna give it more and make sure it's really, really moist. Because the cactus I probably water every 2 weeks rather than every week like the rest of the plants. And there goes the timer for that. So let's look at the bread and see if it's done enough. Oh, that's more than done enough. That's more brown than I usually make it. Why is my oven cooking so hot? There we go. Now we can turn the oven off. And here's our crusty sourdough loaf. That one's extra crusty, I guess. That might be because it was overproofed. I don't have a lot of experience with overproofing bread. I just try to follow the directions as much as possible. And this one could have been cooked longer. This one's a little underdone, and this one's a little overdone, but that's okay. I have been battling and battling in this grow tent with first spider mites, and those are fairly easy to deal with. They don't like moisture, so I could just get them wet, use neem oil, multiple things. And I've not seen any in weeks and weeks, but recently, maybe 2 weeks ago, maybe less, I saw aphids on my spinach, and I was like, oh girl, no, we don't deal with aphids here. So I've been spraying lots and lots of neem oil, but I haven't been able to take my pepper plants, these big plants in the back of the grow tent, for a while. I just haven't had time. I've been working extra, and I just looked at this pepper plant and was like, are my leaves moving? Oh girl, no. So there's a good chance I'm gonna kill this plant. It's not worth having aphids in my house to overwinter a pepper, because look at all these peppers I'm starting anyway. I can just start new ones for myself. Even though these ones grow really slowly, they're Sugar Rush peach peppers. Slowly doesn't matter to me versus aphids. So let me show you this plant and why it gets chopped. So this is the angle that I have it in there, and I noticed how like crinkly the leaves looked. I was like, what the heck? So I get in close, and look at all of those. That is disgusting. Those are all aphids. Some of them are dead, but a lot of them are alive. Even this bucket is sticky from me spraying neem oil so much in the past few weeks. Yeah, these leaves are sticky. So a lot of these aphids are dead. Some just fell off. But some of them are definitely alive, and it's just not worth it to me. I didn't realize. There's just so many of them. Let me see if I can. There's so many of them. All of those little green bodies are just little tiny aphids. This right here, that's a live one. You can see it moving. I'm not a fan, so I'm probably just going to take these buckets and all of the soil in them, including the plants, outside, and they're gonna die because peppers don't like cold. But like I said, it is much more worth it to me to restart two individual pepper plants than to have this nonsense in my house. So this and that other pepper plant, even though it doesn't look nearly as bad as this, is going outside. And then everything in the grow tent is going to get neem oil sprayed and wiped down. And especially that fig tree, because it's in between both of these pepper plants. So that's what I'm about to do. Let's take this outside. These things are, oh, they're disgusting. Look at this. I'm not okay with that. You see all those little antennas moving? That's gross. I'm getting that out of here right now. So here is the other plant, and you can see there are not nearly as many, but there are some on here. This is some old evidence. That right there, the spider web, is some old evidence of spider mites. But right here are aphids, neither of which I am okay with. So this plant also is just gonna be sacrificed. I tried to overwinter the peppers, but just so many bugs. Oh, that one disgusts me. I don't even want to touch it. They're going outside. So I just checked quite a few leaves, and under the leaves and along the stems, taking off old dead leaves like this. But I just checked quite a few of the leaves on here, including these most tender, newest little baby guys up there and down here. And I have not seen one single aphid or spider mite. This is a Chicago hardy fig, one of the oldest varieties of fig, so it is cold hardy and also disease, pest, blight resistant. Leaves do get old like this. This one at the most has some sun scald, like I had the light on too long in there, but not anything serious. And once again, still looking now. I haven't seen one single aphid or spider mite, so I think I'm just going to mist this with some neem oil and call it good, but I am going to pull everything out of this tent and disinfect all of the walls, so that'll be a fun adventure. So the very bottom thing that's in here is a liner, and it comes out, it ties to these 4 corner posts. So I took that out, and we're gonna clean this, and then we'll disinfect the liner and put it back. So first we're gonna take this handy dandy broom and just sweep out any large particles of anything. Actually, I need to raise this light to make it easier on myself. That's about as high as I can raise the light. It's way up there now, but it'll be easier for me to walk in there. It's so low usually because it is the only light that I have in here, and starting seedlings is very, very light dependent. Take my shoes off to walk in here. Nobody better be zooming in on my feet. That's weird. Still being careful to not hit the light with the broom handle, because they are breakable lights. Now to disinfect. So this is the cleaner I use. It's just Lysol with hydrogen peroxide instead of bleach. No, I do not use fancy, clean, crunchy cleaners. I just buy what I can. And I'm actually going to start with the back wall and move my way toward the front. Just disinfecting this whole thing because I am tired of these bugs. There's the back wall. I gotta turn off this fan. Well, no, I'll just aim it outward because it'll get really gaseous in here if I turn it off. Ooh, it's warm inside this grow tent. This is the longest I've ever been inside here, so it's pretty warm. It's pretty warm. Okay, that door never closes, so I will wipe it down, but first the floor. And I'm going to use a whole new rag because this one is obviously pretty dirty. I'll use another white one to see how dirty the floor is. Now I'm going to do this little bit of the door that's not like attached to anything. I just have the lining in here on the kitchen floor. So what I'm going to do is use these dirty rags that I just used to clean the walls, try and condense all of this dirt and hopefully soak up some of the water. As you can see, the liner is much dirtier than the actual floor was because this is what the plants and the trays actually sit on in there. I'm sure for the exact reason of the floor not looking like this. Maybe they have like just liners you can buy and replace just them, probably. Not that I need to, this liner is still perfectly fine. But if ever it was dirty enough or worn down enough that you couldn't just clean it, they probably sell these by themselves. So you can just replace it rather than replacing your whole tent. I got a lot of the dirt off. Now I'm going to use this cleaner again to spray it and actually scrub it clean, not just wipe it. My kitchen floor really hurts my knees. I'm not a fan of that. Let's go put this back. Much cleaner. I'm happy with that. I gotta take a break and fix my blood sugar before I go moving all these plants back in there, though. Hey guys, what's up? It is currently many days after the last bit of this video that you would have just watched of me disinfecting the grow tent. I did manage to get all the plants back in there and fix my blood sugar problem, and a lot has happened since then. I just was editing this video while I was at work and realized that that's all I recorded. That was basically the end. I didn't finish it off or show you guys anything else. Hopefully there will not be another 3-week stint until I have another video out, because a lot of things are happening right now and I plan to be doing a lot of recording over the next 3 or 4 days. I just wanted to make sure to come in here on the back end and make sure to tell you guys that I really appreciate you guys watching, and I'm having lots of fun in the garden, starting this spring season out, getting seeds planted, and you guys will be seeing a lot of that shortly. So I really appreciate you guys watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.